The wind howled through the old stone corridor, sending a chill through Prince Alden's spine. The moonlight filtered through the cracked window, casting long shadows on the floor. His hand gripped the ancient doorknob tightly, but his heart raced with dread. He had always known there were secrets hidden in the walls of his family's castle, but he never imagined they would find him now. A low, eerie whisper echoed in the chamber. The voice was soft but clear, as though the walls themselves were speaking. "The curse is true. The royal bloodline is stained." Alden's breath caught in his throat as the words sank in. His knees nearly buckled under the weight of this forbidden knowledge. He knew that this revelation would change everything. The curse that had haunted his ancestors was not a mere tale. It was a dark reality, and Alden was its next victim. The whispering voice continued, "Only you can end it, but at what cost?" The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room full of ancient relics, forgotten by time. In the center, a book lay on a pedestal, its pages cracked and yellowed. With trembling hands, Alden reached for the book, knowing that the secrets within would bind him to a destiny he had no control over. As his fingers touched the cover, a surge of energy coursed through him, sending a jolt of fear through his entire being. He had no choice but to face what awaited. Prince Alden staggered back, his heart pounding as the book's magic pulsed in his veins. He gasped for air, struggling to comprehend the weight of the knowledge he had just uncovered. The curse that had haunted his ancestors for generations was real, and he was now bound to it. The whispers in the room grew louder, urging him to accept the truth. "Only you can break the curse," they echoed. "Only you can end the bloodline's torment. But at what cost?" Alden clenched his fists, battling the urge to flee. He had been trained to lead, to rule, but this burden was unlike anything he had ever faced. The weight of his ancestors' sins hung over him like a dark cloud, and he knew that the only way forward was to confront the past. The truth was clear: the kingdom's future was tied to the unraveling of the royal family's deepest secrets. But would uncovering these secrets cost him his humanity? Would he be able to live with the consequences of what he would learn? His mind raced as he realized that he could never turn back. His journey had begun. Alden's mind raced with questions, each one more troubling than the last. He closed the book with trembling hands, the echo of the whisper still ringing in his ears. His family, the royal bloodline, was cursed, a curse older than the kingdom itself. But why? The truth was now in his grasp, yet it felt as though the very walls of the castle were closing in around him. He turned, seeking a way out, but the door through which he had entered was gone, vanished into the darkness. Panic set in. Had the curse already begun its work, trapping him in this eternal nightmare? Was he the one meant to break it, or was he simply the next in line to suffer? His breath quickened as his pulse raced. The future of the kingdom, his people, rested on what he did next. With the book in hand, Alden had only one choice. He had to seek answers, to find those who could help him understand the origins of the curse. But deep down, he feared that the more he learned, the closer he would get to losing himself. As the candle flickered, the room felt colder, the walls darker, and Alden knew that no one could help him but himself. The weight of destiny pressed heavily on his chest. His journey had truly begun. Alden stumbled toward the door, but as he reached for the handle, a voice louder and more commanding than before filled the room. "You cannot run, Prince." The words were not just a warning, they were a command. His heart skipped a beat as the air around him thickened. The room was no longer just an ancient relic of the past. It was alive. The voice seemed to come from every corner, every crack in the stone walls. "The curse was forged by your own bloodline," it continued. "It is your fate to end it, or to become it." The weight of these words hit Alden like a physical blow. He staggered, clutching the book tighter. His ancestors had made a terrible mistake, one that could only be undone by one of their own. Was he strong enough to do what needed to be done? His mind raced. Was the price of freedom worth the sacrifice? But no answers came. Only the oppressive silence of the room, broken by the soft whisper of the wind outside. He turned back toward the book, his resolve hardening. This was no longer just about the curse. It was about finding his place in a story written long before he was born. With no way out and no clear path forward, Alden knew there was only one option left. He had to seek help, and the only person who might have answers was the one who had warned him about the curse in the first place, Elder Rian, the wise guide who had served his family for years. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, and Alden couldn't help but feel the weight of his bloodline's sins pressing down on him. Yet, despite his fear, there was a spark of hope deep within him. He could still turn this around. Perhaps Elder Ryan held the key to unlocking the truth and breaking the curse that had haunted his family for generations. The question was no longer whether Alden wanted to fight. He had no choice but to fight. But the real question was whether he would survive the truth, the consequences of the decisions that had already been made for him. He left the room with the book in hand, his mind set on finding Rian. But as he walked through the ancient halls, the weight of the curse seemed to follow him, a dark shadow that would never fully leave. The whispers of his ancestors filled his ears, urging him to stop, to turn back. But Alden couldn't stop now. He was bound to this fate, whether he liked it or not. Prince Alden's journey had only just begun, yet the weight of his task already felt insurmountable. With the cursed book in hand, he journeyed through the dark corridors of the castle, the whispers of his ancestors still echoing in his mind. The voice, now less a whisper and more a constant presence, urged him forward. "You are the last hope, Alden. The kingdom's fate lies in your hands." He could no longer ignore it. The curse was real, and it was his to undo. His heart ached with uncertainty, but there was no turning back now. The very walls of the castle seemed to close in on him, as if the building itself was aware of his burden. Each step echoed loudly in the silence, the oppressive atmosphere weighing heavily on him. In the deepest chambers of the castle, hidden away from prying eyes, he had heard of Elder Rian, a figure revered for his knowledge of ancient curses. Rian had warned his family years ago that the curse would one day resurface, but no one had listened. Now, Alden had no choice but to seek the Elder's counsel. As he neared the chamber where Rian was said to dwell, Alden paused. His thoughts lingered on what he might find there. Would Rian be able to help him, or would the Elder only confirm his worst fears? Alden reached the door to the Elder's chamber, his pulse quickening with each step. He had heard legends of Elder Ryan, whispers of a man whose knowledge of curses was unrivaled, but whose methods were rumored to be unorthodox. He took a deep breath, pushing open the heavy wooden door. Inside, the room was bathed in the soft glow of candles. Shelves lined the walls, filled with ancient tomes and mystical artifacts. At the center of the room, an old man sat at a wooden desk, scribbling something in a large leather-bound book. His long silver beard and weathered face reflected a life of wisdom and experience. He looked up as Alden entered, his piercing blue eyes locking onto the young prince. "Ah, Alden," he said in a gravelly voice. "I wondered when you would come." The Elder's gaze softened, and for a moment, Alden felt a flicker of hope. "You seek answers," Rian continued. "But be warned, the truth may be more than you can bear." The room seemed to grow colder as the weight of the Elder's words settled in. Alden's grip on the book tightened. "I must know," he replied, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Tell me what the curse is, and how I can break it." As Alden stepped into the room, the heavy door creaked shut behind him. The atmosphere seemed to change, as though the very air thickened with the knowledge that had passed through these walls. Rian motioned for Alden to sit, his eyes never leaving the prince. The Elder's fingers traced the edge of the book, recognizing its significance. "This," Rian said, "is the book of the Forsaken Bloodline. It holds the key to the curse, but also to your family's downfall." The words hit Alden like a blow. His mind reeled as he struggled to process the gravity of the Elder's statement. "What is the curse?" Alden asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rian sighed, a deep, sorrowful sound that echoed through the room. "The curse was not placed upon your family by some external force. It was self-inflicted, a pact made long ago by your ancestors, a dark bargain with a power far beyond their control. The curse is a punishment for that pact. And now your bloodline, are bound to it. The room seemed to close in around Alden, the weight of Ryan's words suffocating him. How can I break it? He asked, desperate for any hope. Ryan's gaze softened, but his words were filled with grim truth. Only by confronting the darkness within yourself, Alden. The curse is not an external enemy. It is a part of who you are. To end it, you must first face your own demons. Alden stood silent, his thoughts racing as Ryan's words echoed in his mind. The curse was not something he could defeat with a sword or magic. It was an intrinsic part of him, of his very blood. How could he fight something that was so deeply woven into his existence? He turned to the elder, searching for any sign of hope, any hint of a way out. Ryan's eyes softened, but the sorrow in his gaze was undeniable. The path you must walk will not be easy, he said. The curse will twist your very nature, turning you into the very thing you fear. Alden swallowed hard, his throat dry. He thought of his family, the kingdom, the people who relied on him. He couldn't let them down, not after all the suffering. Tell me what I must do, Alden said, his voice steady, though his heart was heavy. You must journey to the heart of the kingdom, to the old temple where the pact was made. Ryan replied. There you will find the answers you seek. But beware, your journey will not be without sacrifice. The curse demands a price. Alden nodded, the weight of his decision sinking in. There was no turning back now. He had to face whatever lay ahead, no matter the cost. Alden left the elder's chamber with a sense of urgency, his heart pounding as he made his way through the castle. The reality of his situation had only just begun to sink in. He wasn't just a prince anymore. He was the bearer of his family's curse, bound by fate to confront a darkness far beyond his understanding. The path ahead was clear, but the road to the old temple was fraught with danger. As he exited the castle and stepped into the cold night air, Alden felt a strange sensation, a connection to the land, to the very kingdom he had sworn to protect. The wind whispered through the trees, and for a moment it felt as though the kingdom itself was calling him to action. But despite the sense of purpose that filled him, Alden couldn't ignore the gnawing fear in his chest. Could he truly break the curse? Could he face the darkness within and survive? As the stars above twinkled, he steeled himself for what lay ahead. There was no turning back now. The cold wind bit at Alden's skin as he ventured deeper into the forest, his path illuminated only by the flickering light of his lantern. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out like grasping hands. The night felt oppressive, the weight of the curse pressing on him with every step. His thoughts were a chaotic swirl of doubt and fear. Am I truly capable of breaking this curse? He whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the rustling of the leaves. His journey to the old temple had taken longer than he expected, and the further he traveled, the more he realized how little he truly understood about the task before him. The stories Ryan had shared about the curse, about the darkness woven into his bloodline, seemed to be more than just a tale. They were a fate he couldn't escape. But still, he marched on, determined to do whatever it took to save his kingdom. His heart ached as he thought of Lady Alara, the love they shared, and the impossible choices he had to make. The only thing that mattered now was breaking the curse, even if it meant sacrificing everything he held dear. The night grew darker, colder, and Alden couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. As Alden pressed on, he began to sense an unsettling presence in the forest. The air around him grew thick with an unnatural chill, and a soft whisper echoed through the trees. He froze, his instincts screaming at him to turn back, but he couldn't. Not now. His resolve was stronger than his fear. He gripped the lantern tighter and pushed forward, though the feeling of being watched intensified with every step. Suddenly, from the darkness ahead, a figure emerged. It was tall and cloaked in shadows, its form indistinct. Alden's heart raced. "Who's there?" he called, his voice steady despite the fear rising within him. The figure didn't respond, but a low, guttural laugh echoed in the stillness of the forest. Alden took a cautious step back, Every muscle in his body tensed. "Show yourself," he demanded. The figure stepped forward, revealing a pair of glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. A voice as cold as death itself spoke from the shadows. "You are close, Prince Alden. The curse is not your only enemy." The figure moved closer, and Alden's blood ran cold as the true nature of his journey became even more terrifying. The figure stepped closer, its movements slow but deliberate. Alden could now make out the details of its form. Its skin was ashen, its eyes glowing like embers in the dark. "What do you want?" Alden demanded, his voice quivering with a mixture of fear and anger. The figure remained silent for a moment, the air around them growing heavier with each passing second. Then it spoke, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "The curse you carry is not the only burden you must bear," it said, its voice echoing in Alden's mind. "There is another, one far more dangerous than the one you seek to break." Alden felt his pulse quicken, the weight of these words sinking into his very soul. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice trembling. The figure tilted its head, its eyes never leaving Alden's. "You are not the only one tied to this fate," it whispered. "Others are waiting, watching, ready to take what is rightfully theirs." Alden's breath caught in his throat. Could this be true? Was there more to his family's curse than he had been told? Before he could speak again, the figure disappeared into the darkness, leaving Alden alone once more. The forest had become even quieter, and the weight of the unknown pressed heavily on him. Alden stood frozen, his heart racing in his chest as the figure's words echoed in his mind. He had thought that the curse was the only thing standing between him and his kingdom's salvation. But now, it seemed that there were others involved, forces beyond his understanding, waiting in the shadows. The fear that had once been an undercurrent in his thoughts now consumed him. He had always been a prince, trained for leadership, prepared for the weight of the crown, but this was something else entirely. A darker, more dangerous game was being played, and Alden was caught in the middle. His thoughts turned to Alara. What would happen to her? Would she be safe while he pursued the truth of his family's curse? Or would she be dragged into the darkness with him? He couldn't let that happen. But as much as he wanted to protect her, Alden knew that he couldn't escape this fate. His bloodline had already sealed their destiny. He had to continue, no matter the cost. His journey had only just begun, and with it, a new sense of resolve took root in his chest. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but Alden was no longer the scared prince who had set out on this journey. He was determined to face whatever lay ahead, no matter how terrifying or unknown. With the figure's words still ringing in his ears, Alden finally gathered the strength to move forward. He couldn't afford to let fear control him, not now. He had to find answers, and the only way to do that was to reach the old temple, where the truth of his bloodline awaited him. The path was difficult, and the further he ventured, the more treacherous the journey became. The forest seemed to grow darker, the air thicker, as though the land itself was alive and trying to keep him away. But Alden pushed forward, his mind set on the task at hand. Every step he took brought him closer to the temple, and hopefully to the answers he so desperately needed. The night stretched on, but Alden felt an unshakable sense of purpose, the weight of the curse and the prophecy giving him the strength to continue. He had no choice but to face whatever awaited him. As he neared the temple's entrance, the ground beneath his feet seemed to pulse with energy. He had arrived. But was it too late to stop the darkness from consuming him? Alden stood at the edge of the temple's grand entrance, its ancient stone pillars weathered by time. The air was thick with tension, the path ahead filled with both dread and purpose. He could feel the curse stirring within him, a restless force eager to be freed. The weight of his ancestors' sins hung over him, threatening to consume him whole. Each step into the temple felt like a step further away from the person he once was. As he ventured deeper into the temple's heart, whispers filled the air, cold and foreboding. He had come here to break the curse, but with every dark passage he crossed, the question remained: was he strong enough to face what awaited inside? The temple seemed alive with ancient energy, its walls echoing with the weight of forgotten truths. The deeper Alden ventured, the stronger the presence of the curse became, and the more he realized there was no turning back. He had to confront what was buried within these walls, even if it meant losing himself forever. As Alden moved deeper into the temple, the silence grew oppressive. The walls seemed to close in on him, their cold, jagged surfaces reflecting the dim light of his lantern. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the darkness, causing Alden to freeze in place. "So you have come, Prince Alden," it sneered. The voice was unmistakable. Duke Malus, his once trusted advisor, now revealed as an enemy. "Did you truly believe you could break the curse?" The words cut through the air like a blade. Alden's heart raced as he turned, his hand instinctively reaching for the sword at his side. "Malus," Alden said, his voice tight with anger and betrayal. "You're the one behind this all, aren't you?" The Duke's figure emerged from the shadows, his eyes glinting with malice. The curse was never meant to be broken. It was meant to be embraced, to rule over everything. The true nature of his betrayal sank in, and Alden's resolve hardened. The battle for his kingdom had begun. Alden raised his sword, the tip gleaming faintly in the lantern's light as he advanced toward Malus. "You betrayed everything I believed in. My family, my kingdom," he spat. Malus chuckled darkly, his form barely visible in the shadows. "You misunderstand, Alden. The curse is power, not a prison. It is the key to ruling, to taking what should have been ours from the start." The Duke's eyes burned with ambition, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "You're just a puppet in the game. Your family sealed your fate long ago. But I intend to take what's mine." Alden's grip tightened on the sword. "Not if I stop you first," he declared. The two locked eyes, and for the first time, Alden saw the true face of the man who had once been his mentor. The world was shifting beneath his feet, but Alden knew one thing. This fight wasn't just for his family's honor. It was for the future of the kingdom itself. The battle was fierce. Alden's sword clashed against Malus' dark magic, sparks flying with each strike. The temple shook as the power of their clash resonated through the stone walls. Alden could feel the weight of the curse growing stronger, his bloodline's dark history calling out from within. As Malus' magic enveloped him, Alden felt a surge of darkness within himself. The curse had always been there, a part of him, and now it was tempting him to give in, to join Malus in his quest for power. For a moment, Alden faltered, the darkness within him threatening to consume him. But then he remembered everything he was fighting for, the people of his kingdom, his loved ones, Ilara. With renewed strength he pushed the darkness aside and struck out with his sword, breaking through Malus' magic. The Duke staggered back, his smirk fading. "You are stronger than I thought," Malus said, his voice filled with contempt. "But you cannot defeat me, not now." With one final decisive strike, Alden's sword pierced Malus' defenses, and the Duke collapsed to the ground, defeated. The temple fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Alden stood over Malus' fallen form, his breath ragged from the battle. As the dust settled, Alden realized that the real battle had only just begun. The curse was not over. The power Malus had sought to wield was still alive, still pulsing within the temple. "This is not the end," Alden murmured to himself. "This is just the beginning." The true source of the curse, the dark force that had bound his bloodline, still awaited him at the heart of the temple. And Alden knew he had to face it, no matter the cost. With renewed determination, he began his journey deeper into the temple, ready to confront the darkness that lay within. Alden stood at the edge of the dark chasm, the final trial ahead. His body ached, his mind weary from the battles fought, yet the weight of his purpose carried him forward. The curse, still bound to his blood, urged him to take the final step. He had come too far to turn back now. His hand clenched around the cursed book, the one relic that held the power to break the dark chains of his bloodline. The voices of his ancestors whispered in his ear, urging him to embrace his destiny. Yet, Alden hesitated. Could he truly free his family from the curse, Or would this last act of defiance cost him everything? As the wind howled through the chasm, the truth dawned on him. His destiny was not just to break the curse, but to rewrite the fate of his entire bloodline. The ancient temple stood before him, its towering spires casting shadows over the land. He had no choice but to face the darkness, even if it meant losing himself in the process. With one last breath, he stepped forward, prepared for whatever awaited him. As Alden approached the heart of the temple, the air grew colder, and the walls seemed to pulse with dark energy. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and a low hum resonated from the very depths of the temple. The curse, alive and aware, fed off his fear, making each step feel like an eternity. "You have come to end me," a voice echoed, its words a chilling reminder of the power that had corrupted his family. It was not just the curse that awaited him. It was the very darkness that had been passed down through generations. "But you cannot escape what is written in your blood." Alden's heart pounded as the walls seemed to close in. His breath grew shallow as the weight of his family's sins crashed down upon him. He thought of Elara, of the kingdom he was bound to protect. No matter what, he would end this curse, no matter the cost to himself. The dark voice continued, wrapping around him like a suffocating fog. Alden closed his eyes, trying to block out the fear. "You cannot fight what is already within you," the voice taunted. "The darkness is part of you, Alden. It always has been." But Alden would not yield. The curse had sought to control him for generations, but he would not let it define him. With a steady breath, he lifted the cursed book, its pages glowing with an eerie light. The power within it surged as he recited the words he had learned, the words that could break the curse. "I am the one who will free my bloodline," he said, his voice unwavering. The ground shook as the power of the book reacted, the very temple trembling as the ancient magic stirred. "This ends now," Alden declared, his resolve solidifying like steel. The darkness around him surged, but so did his strength. It was time to reclaim his destiny. As the words left Alden's mouth, the very fabric of the temple seemed to unravel. The curse fought back, its malevolent force pushing against him with a power he could barely comprehend. For a moment, Alden felt his strength faltering as the darkness inside him threatened to take over. But then he thought of everything he had fought for, his people, Elara, the future of his kingdom. With a final defiant cry, he unleashed the full power of the book. The energy exploded outward, engulfing the temple in a blinding light. For a brief moment, there was nothing but the pure force of magic, overwhelming and all-consuming. And then, as quickly as it had come, the light faded, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. The temple's walls stood firm, but the oppressive energy that had once filled the air had vanished. The curse was broken. Alden collapsed to his knees, exhausted, but a sense of peace washed over him. The darkness that had plagued his bloodline for centuries had been ended. When the light faded, Alden stood in the now still temple, the air around him heavy with the aftermath of the battle. The curse had been broken, but the cost had been high. His body was bruised, and the emotional toll weighed on him. But as he stood, looking around at the ruins of the temple, Alden knew that he had won. The bloodline's curse was no more. He had freed his family and his kingdom from the darkness that had held them captive for generations. A sudden thought struck him, Elara. He needed to return to her, to show her that they could finally be free. But even as hope began to blossom in his chest, a lingering doubt remained. Was this truly the end? Or was something else, something darker, still waiting to be unleashed? Only time would tell. With a heavy heart, but a renewed sense of purpose, Alden turned and walked toward the temple's exit, leaving the cursed book behind. The future was uncertain, but Alden was ready to face it. Alden emerged from the temple, the weight of the curse lifted from his bloodline. The first rays of dawn bathed the land in a soft golden light. His body was battered, but his spirit was unbroken. As he walked through the ruined temple grounds, he felt the vast emptiness of the world that lay ahead. The curse was over, but a new chapter had begun. His journey was far from over. The kingdom still needed healing, and the darkness he had faced had left its mark on more than just his bloodline. He thought of Ilara. Would she still recognize him as the man who once sought redemption, or had the cost of this victory changed him forever? Yet, there was a glimmer of hope within him now. He had broken free, and so had his kingdom. But would they accept the price of freedom? With a heavy heart, he walked toward the horizon, the promise of a new beginning dawning with each step. As Alden continued toward the kingdom, he found the land seemed quieter, as if the curse had left an echo in the world itself. His thoughts lingered on the cost of his victory. The people, though free from the curse, would now face the consequences of the years it had cast over them. He would need to rebuild not just the kingdom, but also the trust of his people. The battle may have been won, but the real test was yet to come. He thought of Ilara again. What would her role be in this new world? Would she stand by his side, or would the darkness that had once consumed him push them further apart? Alden's heart was full of hope, but also fear. The world was changing, and he was part of that change. The weight of his past still pressed on him, but it was now something he could carry, not something that carried him. Entering the kingdom, Alden was met with silence. The streets, once filled with the hustle of everyday life, were now eerily empty. The people had retreated into their homes, unsure of what the end of the curse meant for them. It would take time to rebuild, to earn back their trust. But as Alden walked through the deserted streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were waiting for him to lead them. The darkness of the past had left its scars, but there was no going back. He had to move forward, not just for his own sake, but for the kingdom's future. The challenge ahead was clear: to restore hope to his people, to rebuild the kingdom brick by brick. But in his heart, he knew it wouldn't be easy. He wasn't the same man who had once walked these streets. He had been changed, reshaped by the trials he had faced. He could only hope that, in time, his people would see him as the leader they needed. At the castle gates, Alden was greeted by his closest allies, but there was no celebration, no joy. There was only the grim reality of what lay ahead. He had broken the curse, but his kingdom was fractured. The people had suffered for too long, and the road to healing would be long and difficult. "The work begins now," Alden said, his voice steady, but with a weight to it. "We rebuild not just the castle, but the trust of our people." His words were met with solemn nods from his companions. They understood the gravity of the task ahead. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be no quick fixes. But Alden was resolute. He had faced the darkness within himself and come out the other side. Now, it was time to help his kingdom do the same. The curse was broken, but its shadow still lingered, and it would take all of them working together to restore what had been lost. As night fell over the kingdom, Alden stood alone on the castle balcony, staring out at the horizon. The weight of the past few weeks settled heavily on his shoulders, but there was a flicker of hope in the distance. The kingdom would heal, the people would rebuild, and so would he. But it would take time. He thought of Ilara, wondering where she was and whether their paths would cross again. He could feel the weight of the curse that had once bound him, but now there was a sense of freedom, a new beginning. He didn't know what the future held, but he was ready to face it. "This is only the beginning," he whispered to himself as the stars began to shine above. The road ahead was long, but Alden was no longer the man he once was. He had embraced his destiny, and now it was time to shape the future. Alden learns from Elder Ryan that although the curse is broken, an ancient power still binds his family, one that could either save or destroy the kingdom. Alden realizes the real threat lies deeper within his family's history. Ryan explains that Alden's bloodline carries a dangerous power, a legacy from an ancient pact that might still awaken. Alden now faces not only the past, but a new hidden danger that could unravel everything. Ryan urges Alden to seek allies, for the future may still be at risk. Alden commits to facing whatever comes, determined to protect his kingdom and his people from the looming threat, even if it means confronting his family's darkest secrets. Alden studies ancient texts in the royal library, discovering the dark pact made by his ancestors. The power that had once protected the kingdom was now a potential weapon, threatening to break free. The knowledge fills him with both fear and determination. With the kingdom still at risk, Alden vows to confront the hidden force within his family's legacy. Determined to protect his future, he steps into the unknown, ready to face whatever comes next, no longer afraid of his past.